Please welcome Rodney Alcala. Rod, welcome.
Rodney Alcala is the classic narcissist.
At that point, Rodney Alcala is clearly now known as a serial.
Rodney Alcala is one of the most prolific serial probably in the history of the United States.
Ini bukanlah berita biasa, namun benar-benar kisah nyata yang mengerikan dari seorang pemuda lajang menawan dengan IQ mendekati jenius, juga seorang fotografer handal yang menjadi peserta pemenang dalam program acara mencari jodoh yang terkenal TV Nasional, yang ternyata ia adalah pembunuh berantai paling sepanjang sejarah Amerika. Dan kasus ini adalah kasus terpanjang selama puluhan tahun yang akan kita kupas lebih dalam lagi dalam tayangan dokumenter KHAS K Channel. Selengkapnya sesaat lagi hanya di YouTube K Channel, membuka jendela dunia. Dari luar, ia menjelma sebagai fotografer handal yang menawan. Tetapi dari dalam, ia adalah iblis yang sesungguhnya. Melalui lensa kameranya, ia tidak hanya fokus untuk mengambil foto mereka, tetapi juga mengambil nyawa mereka. Pada musim gugur di tahun 1968, seorang gadis kecil berusia 8 tahun tengah berjalan kaki sendirian di jalan Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood, California. Saat itu gadis kecil bernama Telly Shapiro hendak berjalan menuju sekolahnya, dan tiba-tiba sebuah mobil yang dikendarai seorang pemuda menepi untuk menghampiri Telly. Pemuda itu lalu menyapa Telly dan menawarkannya untuk mengantarkan ke sekolah. Tetapi Telly menolaknya karena ia ingat pesan orang tuanya untuk tidak bicara pada orang yang tidak dikenal. Tetapi pemuda itu terus mengikutinya dan membujuk Telly untuk mengantarkannya ke sekolah, sambil mengatakan bahwa ia mengenal orang tua Telly dan ingin menunjukkan foto-foto bagus padanya. Lalu akhirnya gadis kecil itu pun bersedia dan masuk ke dalam mobil pemuda itu. Sementara di seberang jalan, seorang pria bernama Donald Hayes yang kebetulan berada di mobilnya menyaksikan dan memperhatikan pemuda itu yang membujuk Telly untuk menumpang ke mobilnya. Donald berpikir sepertinya ada sesuatu yang tidak beres, sehingga ia memutuskan untuk mengikuti mobil tersebut. Donald mengikutinya hingga mobil pemuda itu berhenti di sebuah apartemen, dan terlihat si pemuda itu mengajak Telly masuk ke dalam apartemennya. Donald semakin curiga, lalu ia segera menelpon polisi agar dapat memeriksa apartemen tersebut, dan tak lama polisi pun segera tiba.
I was driving down Sunset heading toward West Hollywood when I received a call to go see a man. I followed him over to the location. At that time I thought, okay, I better call in for a backup. So I went and called in and requested a backup unit. I went to the front door and started knocking. I could hear someone running around.
Ketika polisi mengetuk pintu apartemen tersebut, selama beberapa saat tidak ada jawaban. Lalu seorang pemuda terlihat mengintip di balik tirai jendela dan berkata bahwa ia sedang mandi. Tetapi setelah menunggu beberapa saat, pintu itu tidak juga dibukanya, hingga polisi memberikan peringatan dan segera mendobrak pintunya. Dan ketika polisi berhasil masuk ke dalam, mereka melihat pemandangan yang sungguh mengerikan.
I see this male person on the other side, no clothes, not dripping with water, no towel, and I said, oh, okay, you need to open the door right now, I need to come in. And he said, wait, let me put my pants on. And I said, okay, you got 3 seconds. I probably waited 5 seconds, and I kicked the door in. To the right was a dining room, to the left was a living room, and straight ahead was a kitchen. And here was this little girl all over the place. Clothes, shoes, and a dress thrown to one side. There was coins on the floor, and she had this steel bar on her neck, which probably weighed 2 pounds.
And there's an image that I will never forget. It's an image of this pipe used to with essentially against her throat, and more that should ever be able to come out of a little 8-year-old girl next to these Mary Jane shoes on the floor of this kitchen.
I looked at her, I thought she was dead, she wasn't breathing. The other officers came around, we were looking for the suspect. I went back to check on Telly, and I just couldn't leave her there like that.
He actually took an 8-year-old girl walking to school. He her and almost her. And the police officer, of course, that responded had a choice between save the little girl or catch the bad guy running out the back door. And he saved the little girl.
Saat itu juga polisi segera menghubungi ambulan dan Telly segera dilarikan ke rumah sakit untuk mendapatkan perawatan. Telly dirawat di ruang gawat darurat, tetapi dokter mengatakan kondisi Telly sungguh mengkhawatirkan dan kemungkinan dokter tidak ada kesempatan untuk dapat menyelamatkannya.
As a prosecutor, we prosecute a lot of bad actors, people who do a lot of bad things. I don't think all criminals are evil, but this man is evil.
Sementara petugas polisi yang masih berada dalam apartemen itu segera menggeledah untuk mencari petunjuk tentang pemuda pemilik apartemen tersebut yang telah kabur, yang bertanggung jawab atas perbuatan kejamnya pada Telly. Dan akhirnya polisi menemukan identitasnya.
I found his ID. We determined he was a student at UCLA in the photography department.
Dalam identitas tersebut tercantum mahasiswa University of California Los Angeles atau UCLA bernama Rodney Alcala.
Rodney had vanished, so police started an exhaustive investigation. They were trying to get an idea of who Rodney Alcala really was.
Police wanted to know who is Rodney Alcala and why would this well-liked 25-year-old college student so viciously an 8-year-old little girl.
Ketika Rodney Alcala telah melarikan diri dan tidak ada yang tahu kemana dia pergi, dengan bekal identitasnya, lalu polisi mendatangi kampusnya di UCLA untuk mencari keterangan tentang Rodney Alcala. Tetapi polisi justru mendapatkan informasi yang di luar dugaan.
Talked to one of his professors at UCLA, and I said, we're looking for Rodney Alcala. He was a student of yours. We've got a felony warrant out for child and assault attempted. And the professor says, you got the wrong man. He says, Alcala was one of my best students. He wouldn't hurt a fly.
As it turns out, this bright, handsome young man with a promising future had nightmarish urges that he refused to ignore.
Alcala was a monster, but a monster with a pretty face and a nice smile and charm and intelligence.
Rodney Alcala lahir dengan nama Rodrigo Jacques Alcala Bucor pada 23 Agustus 1943 di San Antonio, Texas. Ia adalah anak ketiga dari 4 bersaudara. Ia memiliki kakak laki-laki dan perempuan, serta seorang adik perempuan. Mereka sekeluarga tinggal di Meksiko selama beberapa waktu, sampai neneknya meninggal dan ayah Rodney meninggalkan mereka sekeluarga. Yang akhirnya mereka pindah ke Los Angeles, Amerika Serikat. Masa kecil dan remajanya banyak dikatakan orang bahwa Rodney adalah anak yang baik dan santun. Dan ia sangat dikenal sebagai anak yang sangat cerdas.
Rodney had always been an intelligent, polite young man, and so this wasn't normal behavior to him. He'd never been in trouble before.
Rodney tumbuh seperti anak-anak pada umumnya. Ia memiliki banyak teman, banyak saudara, dan sang ibu mencurahkan kasih sayang dan perhatiannya yang penuh pada 4 anak-anaknya, hingga semua anak-anaknya menjadi orang sukses dalam karir mereka masing-masing. Pada awal tahun 1960-an, Rodney bergabung dengan Angkatan Darat Amerika Serikat. Ia mengikuti program pelatihan di Carolina Utara, tetapi tidak berhasil di dunia militer. Ia mendapat banyak masalah yang tampaknya menjadi gangguan mental. Karena kondisi tersebut mencegahnya melakukan tugas militer hingga akhirnya ia diberhentikan dari Angkatan Darat pada tahun 1963.
An IQ test measures his intelligence at over 140. That's nearly genius level. A military psychiatrist evaluated Rodney and found that he had a strong antisocial personality disorder.
His commanding officer wrote a review of Rodney Alcala that was prophetic. This is a selfish man who manipulates others, who's only driven by his own needs.
According to a diagnostic test, a person with a personality disorder may not be antisocial. They may appear socially normal.
Psikiater di rumah sakit merasa bahwa analisis gangguan mental pada Rodney jauh lebih serius daripada sekedar ia diberhentikan dengan hormat. Selepas ia keluar dari militer, ia mendaftar menjadi mahasiswa di UCLA untuk mengejar mimpinya menjadi seorang fotografer. Dan ia lulus pada tahun 1968 dengan gelar Bachelor of Fine Arts, dan ia adalah mahasiswa kehormatan. Dan pada tahun inilah saat di mana ia telah berbuat kejam pada Telly Shapiro yang menyebabkan Telly mendapatkan perawatan serius di rumah sakit. Setelah 32 hari Telly dalam keadaan koma, akhirnya ia tersadar. Semua mengatakan bahwa itu adalah sebuah keajaiban. Keadaan Telly yang kemungkinan tidak dapat terselamatkan akhirnya tersadar dan kondisinya berangsur memulih. Sejak Telly sembuh setelah selama berbulan-bulan dirawat di rumah sakit, orang tua Telly memutuskan untuk tidak lagi tinggal di California. Mereka pindah ke Meksiko karena ayahnya ingin memberikan Telly lingkungan yang lebih baik dan lebih aman untuk tinggal, serta demi proses penyembuhan Telly secara mental yang membutuhkan waktu cukup lama.
I don't remember going up to the apartment, and I don't remember anything after that. My parents mentioned nothing. It was never brought up. It was never spoken about. I remember walking into my classroom and everyone looking at me like I was supposed to be dead.
After he and raped an 8-year-old girl, Rodney Alcala moved to New York and started living under the alias of John Berger.
Ia kemudian belajar di sekolah film dan menjadi mahasiswa di New York University atau NYU. Dan di kota New York inilah ia tinggal selama 3 tahun sebagai buron.
While in New York, he was a girl. He hit over the head with a Coke bottle. That girl was able to run away.
He had personality traits. He had no shame, and he didn't, feel guilty about anything that he did.
Di awal tahun 1970-an, kota New York terdapat banyak permasalahan, baik dalam hal pelayanan publik, masalah sampah yang menggunung, kekerasan dan kejahatan kerap terjadi dan semakin meningkat. Dan di kota inilah Rodney tinggal di bawah radar sebagai John Berger dan memungkinkannya lagi untuk melakukan dorongan jahatnya. Daerah sebelah timur Manhattan dikenal sebagai daerah yang banyak dihuni oleh para wanita muda yang berkarir. Salah satunya adalah Cornelia Greeley, seorang gadis cantik yang baru saja mendapatkan pekerjaan impiannya sebagai pramugari. Ia baru menempati apartemen di Jalan East 83.
She was beautiful. She had long, beautiful Irish hair and Irish eyes, big smile, very friendly and funny. I was 29 or 30. She was probably 23 at the time.
Tetapi pada 24 Juni 1971, pria tampan impiannya yang baru ia pacari bernama Leon. Pada hari itu, ia mendapat telepon dari ibunya Cornelia yang mengatakan bahwa Cornelia menghilang tanpa kabar.
I'd gotten a job in a Brooklyn DA's office. So in the middle of the day, I got a call from her mother saying she couldn't find her. I said, okay, when I leave, I'll go find her. I'm sure she's at the apartment.
Lantas sepulang kerja, Leon segera mendatangi apartemen Cornelia, di mana ia memiliki akses masuk ke gedung apartemen tersebut. Hingga ia bisa langsung masuk dan mengetuk pintu unit apartemen kekasihnya itu. Tetapi setelah sekian lama tidak juga ada jawaban, lantas Leon segera menghubungi polisi. Dan ketika polisi datang, mereka segera mendobrak pintunya. Dan benar saja, Cornelia ada di dalam apartemennya, namun dalam keadaan tidak bernyawa, dengan kondisi jasadnya yang sangat tidak wajar.
I knocked on the door, and there was no response. That's when I called the cops. And they came over. I was at the front door when they broke into the back window. They opened the door. They told me that she had been...
She was down on the floor of her New York apartment. She had been filled with nylon stockings and also had marks on her. She'd been raped and brutally murdered.
The Crilly case is very unique because she just moved in the apartment. She's a new girl. No one knew her.
The New York PD has this brutal crime scene and no suspects.
There was 2,000 murders that year. It wasn't peace, love, and joy. Detectives had a lot of dead ends with this case. They had nothing, unfortunately, and the case went cold.
Rodney Alcala yang menyamar sebagai John Berger, kini ia menghabiskan musim panasnya bekerja sebagai konselor di sebuah camp seni di New Hampshire.
Here's a guy who's on the run for an 8-year-old child. And now he's got a job working with children. That's messed up.
Dan pada saat ini, detektif LAPD Steve Hoodle belum menyerah dalam mengejar Rodney Alcala untuk dapat mempertanggungjawabkan perbuatannya terhadap Shelly Shapiro. Detektif meyakinkan FBI untuk menempatkan Rodney pada poster 10 daftar orang yang paling dicari FBI. Dan akhirnya FBI tertarik pada kasus ini dan mencantumkan foto Rodney dalam poster 10 daftar orang yang paling dicari oleh FBI, di mana poster tersebut disebarkan di sebuah daerah dan di berbagai tempat, termasuk di kota kecil New Hampshire, salah satunya ditempel di sebuah kantor pos.
I was pretty much convinced he'd gone to Mexico because he had relatives in Mexico.
So it's been 3 years now since the rape of Shelly Shapiro. The FBI eventually became interested in the case and put Rodney Alcala on the 10 most wanted list.
Suatu hari, 2 siswi yang berkemah masuk ke kantor pos tersebut, dan secara tidak sengaja mereka berdua melihat poster itu. Mereka terkejut karena salah satu foto di antaranya adalah foto John Berger, konselor mereka. Lalu mereka berdua segera memberitahu kepada kepala konselor. Tetapi kepala konselor meminta 2 siswi tersebut untuk merahasiakannya, sampai kepala konselor tersebut mendatangi kantor pos untuk memastikan. Dan setelah meyakini bahwa itu memang John Berger, lantas kepala konselor segera menghubungi FBI. Dan disinilah akhirnya FBI dapat segera menangkapnya. Rodney Alcala alias John Berger dibawa kembali ke Los Angeles untuk mempertanggungjawabkan perbuatannya terhadap Shelly Shapiro.
I get a phone call saying he's in custody, come and get him. So on the 12th of August, 1971, I, with a partner, picked him up, took him to the airport, flew him back. We got our guy. You know, he's going to prison for at least 20, 30 years. He's pretty quiet the whole flight, but he's still putting on his charming demeanor, as if he doesn't have a care in the world. You know, this is all a big mistake. This guy is smooth, calm, collected, you know, as if he doesn't have a worry in the world. So we get back, we take him in, book him, and start the process.
But there's a problem. The family has moved to Mexico. That's their way of escaping when it happened.
In 1971, Rodney Alcala is arrested in New Hampshire and brought back to LA to finally face charges for Shelly Shapiro. Rodney Alcala is charged with all the crimes against Shelly Shapiro, which including child molestation and injury.
Tetapi orang tua Telly Shapiro tidak bersedia untuk bersaksi, karena itu akan terlalu traumatis dan mereka lebih mementingkan fokus dalam menyembuhkan mental putri kecilnya.
It turns out that because Tally and her family were in Mexico, the only charge they could put on him was a plea deal for child molestation. No brutality, no bashing, no raping, no almost.
And they wound up giving Rodney Alcala a plea deal where he pled to what's known as an indeterminate sentence. He had 1 year to life in California State Prison.
Kasus yang paling berbahaya dari sosiopat adalah mereka sangat persuasif. Sehingga saat di penjara, Rodney direhabilitasi dan mereka menganggap bahwa Rodney Alcala telah menunjukkan kemajuan dalam 34 bulan. Akhirnya, Dewan Pembebasan Bersyarat California membebaskan Rodney Alcala. Itu berarti ia kembali bebas berada di jalanan.
He was able to read people very well and stay a step or two or three ahead of them. For him, it was all a kind of a chess game.
In June 1977, Rodney Alcala is released again from California State Prison, and he goes in, different parole officer this time, and he asks for permission to go on some vacations.
And the parole officer miraculously says, sure, go ahead. So Rodney heads off to New York.
2 bulan setelah Rodney dibebaskan, ia tertangkap sedang menghisap marijuana di tebing pantai di pantai Huntington saat matahari terbenam bersama seorang gadis remaja 13 tahun dan ia kembali ditangkap polisi. Kali ini ia mendapat hukuman 2,5 tahun penjara. Pada tahun ini, di kota New York adalah masa yang sulit bagi semua orang. Dengan cuaca yang sangat panas, beruap, sampah menumpuk di mana-mana, dan kejahatan yang merajalela.
When you used to read the newspaper, Daily News or the Post, the first 20 pages of just violence, 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 every day.
There were a lot of murders going on, including Son of Sam.
During the time of Son of Sam in 1977, the city was afraid. Look, you had a lunatic running around, men and women in cars.
Police in New York are on special alert tonight for a psychopathic who calls himself Son of Sam.
His favorite targets, young white women with long dark hair.
Ya, pada tahun ini, kasus pembunuhan Son of Sam, seorang psikopat yang telah menakuti 16 juta warga New York dan menjadi kasus yang paling menggemparkan hingga 300 detektif dikerahkan untuk menangkapnya dan berakhir mendapat hukuman penjara selama 300 tahun yang akan dikupas dalam tayangan dokumenter kisah nyata dunia di K-Channel pada episode selanjutnya. Ketika warga New York sedang ketakutan, Rodney kembali ke kota ini dan berada di jalanan. Ia berkeliaran menawarkan pada orang-orang untuk difoto olehnya. Dan suatu ketika, seorang gadis muda cantik bertubuh semampai bernama Ellen Hoover bersedia untuk difoto olehnya. Ellen Hoover adalah putri dari seorang jutawan. Ayahnya adalah pemilik klub malam terkenal, Cyrus di Hollywood, tempat di mana para politisi, selebriti, dan orang-orang kelas atas biasa sering berkumpul. Dalam 2 hari ini, pada tanggal 13 dan 14 Juli 1977, adalah hari pemadaman yang sangat dikenal di kota New York.
On July 13th and 14th was the famous New York City blackout.
This is an ABC News special report.
New York City went totally dark last night, and tonight large parts of the city still are without power.
It's lawlessness. People loot, crime goes through the roof. People are afraid.
No refrigeration, no water, no lights on one of the hottest, steamiest nights of the year in New York City.
Dan itu adalah masa sulit yang sangat meresahkan bagi semua orang. Dan setelah hari pemadaman, keesokan harinya pada 15 Juli 1977, Ellen Hoover menghilang.
The phone rang. It was Ellen's mother, Yvonne Schwartz. Mrs. Schwartz asked me if I had heard from Ellen, since the weekend. And I said, no. The next thing I knew, I was watching the 11 o'clock news, and there was Ellen's picture, New York heiress missing.
Menghilangnya putri jutawan Ellen Hoover menjadi berita besar sekaligus sebuah misteri besar bahwa wanita muda sosialita hilang begitu saja. Berita menghilangnya Ellen Hoover ditayangkan di semua berita media dan poster-poster terpampang di jalanan sehingga menjadi pembicaraan utama warga kota New York.
There was nothing in her background that suggested that she would have run away.
Dan ketika polisi kembali mendatangi tempat tinggalnya, mereka tidak melihat ada pemaksaan masuk. Sepertinya tidak ada serangan yang terjadi di sana. Polisi mengumpulkan berbagai kemungkinan petunjuk seperti surat-surat, catatan diary, dan membawa sebuah kalender yang bertuliskan pertemuan dengan John Berger pada 15 Juli. Lantas polisi segera mencari tahu siapakah John Berger.
They research back and they try to ID who John Berger is.
You're talking about a woman who goes missing in New York City pre-computer. And so Rodney Alcala / John Berger was never really on the radar of the New York City Police Department.
Pada saat ini, Rodney Alcala kembali ke Los Angeles dan dia di sana benar-benar mencoba mencari pekerjaan. Dan dia segera mendapatkan pekerjaan itu di surat kabar Los Angeles Times di bagian typesetting. Dan kali ini dalam lamaran pekerjaannya ia menggunakan nama aslinya Rodney Alcala. Dan ironisnya ia mengetik untuk surat kabar terbesar yang melaporkan tentang kejahatannya. 5 bulan setelah Rodney Alcala pindah ke Los Angeles, FBI mulai bisa menghubungkan antara Rodney Alcala dengan John Berger. Lalu Rodney diinterogasi oleh FBI terkait hilangnya Ellen Hoover. Dan dia mengakui bahwa dia sempat bersama Ellen Hoover pada tanggal 15 Juli. Rodney mengatakan dia telah membawanya ke Westchester untuk memotretnya dan mereka menikmati kebersamaannya. Hanya itu saja. Dan ia tidak pernah lagi melihat Ellen Hoover. 5 bulan setelah Ellen Hoover menghilang, baik kabar maupun jasadnya belum juga ditemukan. Hingga 11 bulan kemudian, putri jutawan itu akhirnya ditemukan.
This is Bill McCreary in North Tarrytown with a story about the discovery of the body of a millionaire's daughter missing for the past 11 months.
Ultimately, she's found. It's almost a year later. She's found up in an area by the Rockefeller estate.
They found clothing of hers nearby. They went back to the same site and they discovered her remains.
But it's all skeletal. She's identified through dental comparison.
Well, police are able to positively identify the remains of Ellen Hoover. There is no forensic evidence that leads them to her killer. And all of these things lead to this sort of perfect storm for Rodney Alcala, where he's able to remain one step ahead of police, and he goes on the hunt for more victims, and there's absolutely nothing to stop him.
Tahun 1970-an dianggap sebagai pusat pasar pembunuh berantai yang terkenal, seperti Son of Sam, John Wayne Gacy, dan Ted Bundy. Dan pada era ini, polisi kekurangan banyak alat investigasi yang mereka miliki. Di antaranya, mereka tidak ada DNA, tidak ada CCTV di setiap sudut, dan tidak ada GPS. Jill Barcombe, seorang gadis remaja dari New York, baru saja tiba di Los Angeles. Suatu malam, ia tengah berjalan di daerah Hollywood Boulevard. Lalu ia bertemu dengan Rodney yang menghampirinya untuk menawarkan tumpangan. Tetapi malam itu menjadi malam tragis akhir hidupnya.
She was 18 years old, so she was very young to be out in Los Angeles on her own. She had gotten caught up in the prostitution world.
She was an extremely attractive girl, so I'm sure she caught his eye.
And we believe that he picked her up on Hollywood Boulevard while she was working.
Keesokan paginya, pada tanggal 10 November 1977, petugas LAPD menerima panggilan telepon tentang penemuan mayat Jill di Jalan Franklin Canyon, dan itu terletak di ujung jalan dari rumah aktor top Hollywood, Marlon Brando. Bahkan aktor itu sempat diinterogasi oleh polisi.
I had night terrors the day that Jill's body arrived. It wasn't just, it was and nobody could understand why the things happened to her.
She has multiple on her neck. It was a crime scene.
He is absolutely the worst of the worst. No question about it. Them almost and then letting them recover and revive and then doing it again. That's just classical.
She fought back very bravely, and what he did to her was completely face down into her with that rock, such that her brother describes how she was almost unrecognizable.
Jill Barcomb's murder had a lot of similarities to those of the Hillside. She'd been found and she was beaten, strangled.
He left her posed, as we believe he did with all of his victims, posed in a way that we believe he took photographs of them after they were.
Because of the Hillside, police were interviewing all in the area, and that included Rodney Alcala. But his luck held up, because police had no idea that they were talking to a man who was guilty of another set of.
Dan lagi-lagi, kasus ini menjadi kasus yang tidak terpecahkan. Georgia Wicksteed berusia 27 tahun. Dia benar-benar sangat cantik. Dia adalah seorang perawat yang bekerja untuk perawatan jantung di rumah sakit. Dia berasal dari Los Angeles dan baru saja pindah ke Malibu. Setiap paginya ia menjemput perawat lain dan mereka pergi ke rumah sakit bersama. Tetapi suatu pagi, Georgia tidak muncul, sehingga polisi dihubungi untuk melakukan pemeriksaan ke rumahnya. Tetapi sesampainya di sana, polisi menemukan jasadnya dalam keadaan yang menyedihkan.
So the police were called to do a welfare check of her in her home. It was discovered that her window was open. When the police entered her home, there was blood everywhere. Her body was completely.
The viciousness and the sadism involved in her is so disturbing and so profound.
There was a handprint that was found on the brass bedding, but there was no one to match the palm print to. And again, that case went cold.
Surat kabar Los Angeles Times terus memberitakan para korban wanita muda ini. Hingga 30 anggota polisi diturunkan khusus untuk menangkap si pelaku. Meskipun Rodney Alcala telah diinterogasi oleh pihak kepolisian, tetapi mereka tidak menjadikan Rodney sebagai orang yang patut dicurigai. Karena Rodney menjelaskannya dengan begitu tenang dan sangat meyakinkan. Dan itu adalah keahliannya yang membuatnya berhasil lolos dari serangkaian kejahatan yang telah ia lakukan selama bertahun-tahun.
The most impressive part of Alcala was his ability to disguise the monster within. I mean, he had this ability to put on this face, this charm.
Charlotte Lamb, seorang sekretaris hukum yang tinggal di daerah Santa Monica. Pada suatu malam, ia pergi untuk berdansa di Santa Monica. Tetapi kemudian, ia ditemukan di sebuah komplek apartemen yang berjarak bermil-mil jauhnya. Dengan kondisi jasadnya yang sungguh menyedihkan.
She was posed with a long shoelace that was tied around her neck.
She had been strangled and she'd been brutally raped Her arms had been folded behind her back, which made her back arch to expose. She'd been posed. It's just very disturbing and incredibly sad.
I met with Rodney 5 or 6 times. I administered assessments with regard to his sexual interests. Many times the regular antisocial person will pose dead bodies, and they do want law enforcement and other people to see this, and there's a message in that. The message for Rodney is that I am here, you will remember me.
Rodney Alcala memang tak mengenal takut dengan banyaknya kejahatan yang telah ia lakukan. Ia sama sekali tidak bersembunyi. Ia justru menampilkan dirinya di luar sana dengan cara yang paling umum. Di tahun yang sama, pada 13 September 1978, Rodney terpilih untuk tampil di sebuah acara di TV Nasional. Acara permainan mencari jodoh yang sangat populer pada saat itu, The Dating Games.
By this point, Rodney Alcala had multiple women. He'd been convicted of being a child. And yet somehow he ended up on a popular game show. How did that happen?
Rodney going on the dating game is a great example of him being predatory, him being confident, narcissistic, and of course he wouldn't go on unless he would win.
In the 70s, I was the executive producer and Ellen was the contestant coordinator. The show that Rodney Alcala appeared on aired in September 1978.
He was very striking. I don't know, there was a boldness about him, and he had long black hair. He was just a striking looking person.
In terms of putting him on as a contestant, I think on the form I wrote NW, which was my symbol for no way, no darn way, is this guy going to be on the show? Because I noticed that he had a very strange personality.
It's like, are you kidding? He's so attractive. Everyone's going to love him. All the women are going to love him.
And I said, all right, we'll put him on a show, but we've got to surround him with 2 guys that have personalities and that are respectable and decent and fun.
My name is Jed Mills. When I got the job on the dating game, they said, you're going to be bachelor number 2, so you'll be sitting in the center. Bachelor number 1 is a little creepy. Notice that right away. In the green room, he jumps in. He says, I always get my girl.
Rodney's motives for going on the dating game are, in my opinion, part of his personality disorder. He wants a lot of attention and he believes he should have it. He's quite bright and he wants the world to know who he is.
And welcome to the dating game, and we'll get right underway. It's time to meet our first 3 eligible bachelors for game number 1, and here they are. Good luck, gentlemen. Well, let's see. Bachelor number 1 is a successful photographer who got his start when his father found him in the dark room at the age of 13. Please welcome Rodney Alcala. Rod, welcome. And it's time to meet our young lady for game number 1, and here she is. Here is a young lady with a wealth of experience. Welcome, if you will, sensational Cheryl Bradshaw. Hello, Cheryl. Don't sit down yet. Just a minute. Want to make sure everything is straight. You relaxed? You feel okay? All right. You know there are 3 bachelors over there. There'll be 1, 2, and 3. Ask them anything you like to find out more about them, except their name, age, occupation, or income. Okay? And we're going to start by having them say hello to you and see how they sound. Number 1, would you say hello to Cheryl, please?
We're going to have a great time together, Cheryl.
Okay. And here we go.
Bachelor number 1.
Yes.
What's your best time?
The best time is at night. Nighttime. Ready?
I'm a drama teacher, and I'm going to audition each of you for my private class. Bachelor number 1.
You're a dirty old man.
Take it.
Oh, come on, over here.
Bachelor number 1. I am serving you for dinner.
Oh.
What are you called and what do you look like?
I'm called the banana, and I look really good.
Can you be a little more descriptive?
Peel me.
Good answer, but now I'm going to ask you a question. Will that date be bachelor number 1, bachelor number 2, or bachelor number 3? Who gets the dates?
Well, I like bananas, so I'll take 1.
Number 1, bachelor number 1, all right. Well, there they go. This is your date, and I want to tell you something about him, Cheryl. He's a skydiver. He's into motorcycling. He's also a fine photographer. Say hello to Rodney Alcala. Rodney, come on and say hello. Congratulations, Rod. You did it with the one answer.
She has no idea that she has selected a serial killer and that she may be his potential next victim.
Untuk sobat semua, sebelum lanjut ada baiknya untuk mengklik terlebih dahulu tombol like, share, dan subscribe, serta tombol notifikasinya, agar tak ketinggalan update kisah nyata tak biasa dari K-Channel selanjutnya.
Rodney Alcala is the classic narcissist.
Ya, Rodney Alcala selalu menang. Ia terpilih menjadi teman kencan Cheryl Bradshaw. Tetapi kali ini, Rodney tidak memenangi kencan yang sesungguhnya dengan Cheryl. Walaupun Cheryl tidak tahu bahwa Rodney adalah pembunuh berantai yang masih sulit dicari polisi, tetapi Cheryl cukup cerdas untuk membatalkan kencannya dengan Rodney.
She was smart enough not to ever go on the date with him because, in her words, he creeped her out. She seemed very excited about seeing him, and when he came around, I would say it was a pretty lukewarm togetherness.
She called the office the next day and spoke to Ellen.
She said, "Ellen, I can't go out with this guy. There's weird vibes that are coming off of him. He's very strange. I'm not comfortable. Is that going to be a problem?" And of course I said no.
Rodney kembali menjemput tumpangan, seorang gadis remaja bernama Monique Hoyt yang berusia 15 tahun. Setelah menghabiskan malam di rumah Rodney, mereka berdua melakukan perjalanan keesokan harinya menuju ke pegunungan dengan dalih seperti biasa bahwa Rodney ingin memotretnya.
Pull your shirt over your face. Excellent.
Namun di sini Rodney tampak aneh. Setelah Monique tak sadarkan diri akibat benda keras yang dilayangkan oleh Rodney, ia malah menangis. Dan saat Monique tersadar, ia berpura-pura tetap baik. Ia memeluk Rodney yang sedang menangis dan membujuknya untuk pulang ke rumah Rodney dan menghabiskan waktu bersama di rumahnya. Dan tak biasanya, Rodney termakan bujukan gadis 15 tahun itu. Monique terus berusaha tenang dalam perjalanan sampai ia menemukan kesempatan untuk dapat melarikan diri dari Rodney. Dan di saat mereka berhenti di pom bensin dan Rodney turun menuju minimarket, di sanalah Monique segera keluar dari mobilnya dan lari sekencang-kencangnya menuju kantor polisi. Ketika polisi menunjukkan beberapa foto pada Monique tentang pria tersebut, lalu Monique segera menunjuk bahwa Rodney Alcala adalah pelakunya. Rodney kemudian segera ditangkap dan Monique dibawa ke rumah sakit untuk dirawat karena luka-lukanya. Rodney dibebaskan dari penjara sambil menunggu persidangannya pada bulan September. Rodney keluar dengan uang jaminan dari ibunya yang menganggap ada kesalahan atas penangkapannya. Dan saat ini, ia kembali ke jalan dan memiliki banyak kesempatan untuk dapat menemukan lebih banyak korbannya. Korban berikutnya adalah Jill Parenteau, seorang mahasiswi berusia 21 tahun, asal California. Saat Rodney bertemu Jill pertama kali, Jill berhasil menolak ajakannya untuk berkenalan. Tetapi rupanya Rodney sangat gigih hingga ia menemukan alamat rumah Jill. Dan pada suatu malam, tanggal 12 Juni 1979, Jill baru pulang selepas kencan. Rodney tiba-tiba muncul di hadapannya dan menjadi malam terakhir hidupnya. Dan keesokan harinya, pada tanggal 13 Juni, jasad Jill ditemukan dalam keadaan yang sama dengan para korban sebelumnya. Jasad yang tengah berpose dalam kondisi menyedihkan. Dan polisi hanya memiliki sedikit petunjuk.
She was at the end of her bed. She was propped up with her arms underneath her and pillows underneath her to prop up her.
Rodney Alcala was incredibly sadistic to his victims. He would choke them until they'd lose consciousness. And then when they woke back up, he'd do it again.
Rodney kini tinggal di rumah ibunya, di mana rumah itu memiliki pintu masuk terpisah. Ia tinggal di sana agar ia tidak perlu lagi membayar uang sewa. Dan ia mendapatkan penghasilannya dari hasil foto-foto yang ia jual ke majalah khusus dewasa.
He had taken a lot of photos, and he would send these photos to New York and get paid for them. They would go into photography magazines. That's what he did.
Rodney Alcala meninggalkan rumah ibunya dan berkendara menuju ke pantai Huntington. Lalu dia bertemu dengan gadis berusia 17 tahun yang sedang bermain sepatu roda bernama Lori Woods. Lori dan temannya, Perry, didekati oleh Rodney. Lalu Rodney mengatakan bahwa ia adalah seorang fotografer dan ingin memotretnya. Lori tidak keberatan. Dan saat itu Rodney segera memotretnya. Rodney memang seorang fotografer yang terlatih secara formal dan benar-benar memakai metodenya untuk memikat para gadis muda.
And it also shows that he's actively hunting for his next victim.
He was asking me all kinds of questions, like where I'm from, my name, my age. He tried really hard to get me in the car. He tried to get me in the car and leave my friend on the beach.
She doesn't bite, won't get in his car.
He started to drive away, and I did see that he was driving toward Huntington Beach.
Pantai Huntington pada tahun 1979 di bulan Juni penuh dengan anak-anak, orang-orang yang berjemur, orang-orang yang bermain sepatu roda, dan mereka yang bersenang-senang. Dan Rodney kini berada di pantai ini, lalu bertemu dengan Robin Semso. Bin Semso adalah seorang gadis cantik berusia 12 tahun, bermata biru dan berambut pirang, bergaya hidup sehat dan senang berolahraga.
I'm Robin's oldest sister. We are 2 of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls.
Robin was the baby of the family. Her brothers, sisters, mother all doted over Robin.
She always had a spirit about her. I mean, everybody that met her fell in love with her.
Pada pukul 2:30 sore, Rodney Alcala berbicara dengan Bridget Wilbur dan Robin Semso. Rodney mengatakan bahwa ia adalah seorang fotografer dan ia memuji Robin yang cantik hingga menawarkannya untuk memotretnya karena Robin dan Bridget bisa menjadi seorang model.
When Robin and I crossed 14th Street is when I believe he spotted us.
And what he's doing is he's saying, hey, I'm a photographer, you're beautiful, you can be a model, how about you let me take pictures?
And I was having none of it. I was like, no. And he reached out and put his hand on Robin's leg. And that's when I grabbed her. I said, no, this isn't good.
Lalu seorang tetangga melihatnya dan segera mengambil Robin dan Bridget untuk mengingatkan jangan bicara pada orang yang tidak dikenal dan menyuruh mereka untuk segera pulang. Lantas Robin dan Bridget pun segera meninggalkan pantai. Tapi Robin harus berada di kelas balet pada pukul 4 sore. Jadi mereka berdua kembali ke rumah Bridget dan Robin meminjam sepeda Bridget untuk dapat pergi ke latihan balet karena sudah terlambat.
It was time for Robin to be going because she needed to be in the ballet studio to answer phones. That was how she paid for her ballet.
Robin was running late, so Bridget let her use her bike.
Go get my bike. I said, and don't stop. It was very important to me to say that.
He supposedly left, but obviously he didn't because he followed Robin. Robin had to go to her classes. So she left the beach and she borrowed Bridget's bike to go to class so she wouldn't be late. And that's the day she was taken.
And then my house phone rang and it was one of Robin's brothers. And he said, is Robin still with you? Has she left? Because she hasn't shown up to ballet.
And there's not a sign of anything, no bike, no person on the side of the road, nothing.
Mom began to worry, and still an hour or so later, when Robin still hadn't returned, she called the police to file a missing persons report.
And I called the police and told them, I said, my daughter's missing. And they told me that they couldn't take a report for 24 hours. So by the next morning, they declared it.
My mom cried every day.
Bridget was later introduced to a sketch artist to compile a composite of the individual they'd been talking to on the beach.
And when I was done, I was like, that's him. That is him.
It's Rodney Alcala. I mean, you look at that and it's Rodney Alcala.
Sekitar 2 minggu setelah Robin menghilang, seorang penjaga hutan di lokasi yang disebut Chancery Flat tiba-tiba menemukan sesuatu yang tidak wajar, yakni sisa-sisa manusia yang berserakan.
Body up in the hills above Altadena. She was touched by animals. Her bones weren't found for a couple of weeks. There was virtually nothing left of her by the time she was actually found.
Approximately 12 days after Robin went missing, a park ranger in the Sierra Madres at a location called Chantry Flats located some human remains.
But she's been scavenged. What that means is animals have her.
During their search of the area, they also found a shoe that was identified as belonging to Robin.
They came in and they told us that they had found Robin. And my mom broke down, as well as everybody else, my brothers and I. It was devastating.
And Sergeant Jenkins came in and he said, we found Robin. I said, I grabbed my purse. I said, okay, let's go. He says, where do you think you're going? I said, go see Robin. He says, and I got angry. I got so mad. I said, 3 days. I said, how many little girls with long blonde hair disappeared in California that took you 3 days? And he said,
there was no hair.
Her mother, wanted to see her daughter's body, and they had to explain to her that there is no body. There's a skull and there's bones.
Nobody could understand that somebody could actually do something like this.
It's all beginning to close in on Rodney Alcala.
Akhirnya, Rodney Alcala ditangkap di rumah ibunya di Monterey Park dan membawanya ke kepolisian Pantai Huntington untuk segera diinterogasi. Jaminan ditetapkan sebesar $250.000, di mana itu terlalu tinggi yang bisa dibayarkan ibunya. Setelah selama 8 tahun, ia berpesta dengan kejahatannya dan selalu lolos. Akhirnya kini, ia berada di balik jeruji besi. Dan ketika penangkapan di rumah ibunya tersebut, polisi menemukan secari kertas tanda terima yang ditujukan pada Rodney atas fasilitas penyimpanan yang telah ia sewa di kota Seattle. Tetapi polisi tidak lantas segera menggeledah,nya dikarenakan terkait prosedur surat perintah yang harus disiapkan. Di saat ini, kakak perempuan Rodney yang mengunjungi Rodney di penjara terlibat percakapan rahasia. Dengan suara pelan, Rodney meminta kakaknya untuk segera mengambil barang-barang yang terdapat dalam loker rahasianya di Seattle sebelum polisi menemukannya. Tetapi rupanya polisi yang sedang memperhatikan mereka di ruang observasi dapat mendengarnya hingga pihak kepolisian segera bertindak. Dan ternyata dalam loker ini polisi menemukan ribuan foto dan sebagian foto di antaranya cukup mengerikan, serta sekantung penuh perhiasan dalam berbagai bentuk.
Dozens of pieces of jewelry. Every one of those is a memento of some victim someplace. And from that we found Robin Samso's earrings, the ones that she was wearing.
For Rodney, it's his vehicle for power and control. That's why he keeps things.
Dan ketika Ibu Robin dimintai datang ke kepolisian Pantai Huntington untuk mengidentifikasi sejumlah barang-barang milik Rodney yang telah ditemukan polisi, rupanya mengenali perhiasan berupa anting bola emas yang dikenakan oleh putri kecil kesayangannya, Robin.
Two of the earrings found were gold ball earrings. Robin was described as wearing those earrings on the day that she disappeared.
Rodney Alcala diadili atas pembunuhan Robin Samso, dan di saat sidang kasus tersebut, ibu Robin yang begitu sangat hancur atas apa yang menimpa putri kecilnya itu ingin membalaskan dendamnya pada Rodney. Pada masa ini belum ada alat detektor logam, sehingga ibu Robin lolos membawa senjata yang ia simpan di dalam tasnya ketika masuk ke ruang sidang.
Her plan was to Alcala. She really didn't care about anything else at that point. She wanted to avenge her daughter. I remember she was very calm. She just kept saying everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. I do remember her telling me that she heard Robin's voice and told her not to do it. So she had changed her mind.
Pada kasus Robin Samso, para juri membahasnya kurang dari 5 jam dan memutuskan bahwa Rodney Alcala dinyatakan bersalah dan dijatuhi hukuman mati dan segera dibawa ke San Quentin di mana ia akan menjalani hukumannya. Empat tahun kemudian permintaan banding muncul yang tentunya sangat mengejutkan semua orang. Dan putusan terhadap Rodney dibatalkan oleh Mahkamah Agung California yang menyebut persidangan saat itu dilakukan secara tidak benar. Sehingga persidangan terhadap Rodney Alcala diulang kembali.
Think that there's been a gross miscarriage of justice for being found guilty of something that I didn't do?
Just can't believe that we have to be punished for what he did. And that's really what it amounts to.
Because of appeals, as well as problems with witnesses and evidence, there are several trials. This means that Rodney Alcala's victims' families had to hear this horrifying testimony again and again and again. They were in hell.
It's one thing even losing a child, but to keep reliving it for 35 years is...
7 tahun setelah kematian Robin, persidangan untuk kedua kalinya digelar. Dan hasil keputusan dalam persidangan kasus Robin Samso, juri memberikan keputusan yang sama seperti pada putusan sidang sebelumnya. Dan semua orang akhirnya merasa lega bahwa Rodney mendapatkan kejelasan hukuman yang sama yang layak didapatkannya dan tinggal menunggu waktu untuk dieksekusi.
7 years to the day of Robin Samso's disappearance, the second jury convicted Rodney Alcala and also recommended that he be sentenced.
The second time he was found guilty, and he got the death penalty again, and we were extremely happy.
Tetapi pada tahun 2001, Rodney kembali menjadi orang beruntung. Hukuman terhadapnya lagi-lagi dibatalkan di usianya ke-58 tahun. Karena Dewan mengklaim bantuan hukum terhadap Rodney Alcala tidak efektif. Dengan kata lain, bahwa pengacara Rodney Alcala saat itu tidak memberikan pembelaan yang cukup kuat atas Rodney Alcala.
In 2001, Rodney's death penalty was again overturned.
At this point, it's important to remember that Rodney Alcala has been in custody ever since being accused of Robin Samso in '79. He's now 58 years old, and life behind bars has taken its toll, not only on Rodney Alcala, but also on the victims' families who've been trying to achieve justice.
Every time this happens, it's like losing Robin all over again. I don't know if you've ever lost a child, but there's nothing that hurts like that. Nothing.
Jaksa muda yang cerdas, Matt Murphy, ditugaskan untuk persidangan kali ini. Ia mulai mengumpulkan lagi semua bukti-bukti dan dianalisis ulang melalui teknologi tes DNA untuk melawan Rodney Alcala di persidangan. Dan ternyata hasil DNA tersebut sangat luar biasa, di mana itu menghasilkan kecocokan DNA dengan kasus pembunuhan pada Charlotte Lamb, Jill Perencho, Georgia Wickstead, dan Jill Barcombe.
Amazingly, at this point, Rodney Alcala has escaped the death penalty 2 times, and now these victims and these families are going to be turning to me and my team to ensure that he's punished for this once and for all.
For years, Rodney Alcala was able to game the system, but DNA evidence finally caught up with his crimes, and prosecutors used it against him.
We started getting DNA hits in Los Angeles County.
For 28 years, I had no idea. My sister, it wasn't until the trial and being contacted by the Los Angeles Police Department Homicide Division that I understood through the miracle of DNA technology, they had a solid hit.
At that point, Rodney Alcala is clearly now known as a serial.
Sidang hukuman mati terhadap Rodney Alcala untuk ketiga kalinya ditetapkan pada tahun 2010. Kali ini jaksa penuntut Matt Murphy dan Gina Cetriano bersatu untuk melawan Rodney Alcala di persidangan. Sementara Rodney Alcala yang saat ini berusia 66 tahun memutuskan bahwa dia yang akan menjadi pengacara untuk membela dirinya sendiri.
I forget a lot of things. Except the most important thing I can't forget, and that's her, and how she died.
I was the same exact age as Robin Samso. We were both 12 years old in 1979, and you connect with your victim.
Matt Murphy was a young, talented, brilliant prosecutor, and the Alcala case would be his 107th homicide.
And I was going to do everything I could to make sure that he faced justice for what he did.
He is a narcissist. He has a genius IQ measured by some. So he's very brilliant and thinks that translates into being able to be a good lawyer for himself in the case.
Alcala's choice to represent himself was a message to Mr. Murphy that he is equal to him. Mr. Alcala's perceptions about his own superiority should never, ever be underestimated.
So these are the facts of the Samso case.
Because Rodney Alcala was representing himself, he got to cross-examine the witnesses. And then, of course, question Robin Samso's mom.
He'd look at me and he'd have this grin on his face. It was the most evil thing I've ever seen, you know, and he enjoyed it. He enjoyed every minute of it.
She'd been gagged with a t-shirt shoved down her mouth. I wanted the jury to see the level because one of the things that we needed to prove was so that we needed to prove he intended to inflict pain on these victims.
Alcala would pull the women into unconsciousness, wait till they wake up, and then them again. He knew exactly what he's doing, and he enjoyed what he was doing.
This is what they look like.
He was questioning my mother about the earrings, trying to create doubt. Alcala tried to argue with my mother.
All the jury sees is the man, this poor woman's daughter.
It was so hard watching her that I think the three of us just sat there and sobbed.
Matt Murphy membeberkan semua kejahatan Rani Alcala pada para korbannya dari tahun 1968 hingga tahun 1979, termasuk menghadirkan saksi korban selamat, Telly Shapiro.
Robin Samson's day in court is today. You make sure that he is held responsible for what happened to that little girl. He got her into his car, and he drove her up to those mountains. And Rodney Alcala face in when she was still alive.
He was rattled after my closing argument. Because that's when he first learned, he wasn't as smart as he thought he was.
We, the jury, further find and affix the degree thereof, murder in the first degree.
The verdict was guilty on all charges, across the board, all 5. The evidence that we put in for the penalty phase of the trial focused largely on his prior assaults. Telly Shapiro.
Bringing Telly Shapiro in as the one who lived, as the one who got away, is very important for a jury to see what a monster Rodney Alcala is.
If you decide that the death penalty is appropriate punishment, you shouldn't feel too good about it.
Akhirnya, hari putusan pengadilan tiba. Ruang sidang terasa sangat hening. Semua tampak terdiam menunggu juri membacakan keputusan hukuman bagi Rodney Alcala. Dan setelah berunding sekitar 2 jam, akhirnya juri membacakan hasil putusannya.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, determine that the penalty to be imposed upon defendant Rodney James Alcala to be death.
I just pray that I live long enough to watch him be executed. I only wish that I could be the one to administer the injection.
July 23rd, 2019. My mom passed away. She wanted to see that day that Alcala leaves this earth, that he just does not breathe anymore. And it's unfair. It's unfair. Somebody so cruel and evil.
Penyelidik kasus kejahatan yang tak terpecahkan menyampaikan bahwa mereka telah memecahkan 2 kasus pembunuhan paling terkenal di New York yang melibatkan Rodney Alcala pada tahun 1971 dan pada tahun 1977. Walaupun Rodney Alcala telah mendapat hukuman mati di California, Rodney tetap akan diekstradisi ke New York untuk diadili.
He conceded that he did the 2 women in question. I was surprised that he pled guilty. I think ultimately he knew he was going to be convicted. Mr. Alcala got 25 years to life, which is the highest sentence under the law.
Departemen Kepolisian Pantai Huntington merilis ratusan foto yang mereka temukan di loker Rodney di kota Seattle pada masyarakat umum untuk mencari tahu apakah orang-orang dalam foto tersebut ada yang menjadi korban Rodney lainnya dan berharap masyarakat luas dapat membantu mengidentifikasi mereka.
A lot of these women, we have no idea what happened to them. All we know is they were in a vulnerable position, and Rodney Alcala used his charms to talk them into going someplace that he could have his way with them. I mean, since he was convicted for this, we have cleared case after case after case because of those photographs.
Dan setelah kepolisian Pantai Huntington merilis ratusan foto tersebut, misteri hilangnya Christine Thornton selama hampir 40 tahun kini terungkap.
My
My son sent this email to me with all these pictures in it that the police had from a serial killer. That was her. That was definitely her. And I'm like, I think that's Chris. And sure enough, I looked at her little pinky toe, which I remember. It just was very distinctive. It curled up on her other toes. And, I kind of knew that was her. That was definitely her.
In '82, this herder out in the middle of nowhere comes across a pile of bones, obviously human remains.
Several initial deputies responded along with detectives, and what they found was it was a body of a 25 to 35-year-old female.
They also found the bones of an unborn, largely all intact. The clothing was still there. Even some jewelry were all located.
They couldn't determine a cause of death. What they believed was that it was possibly because one of the pant legs was tied in a ligature. In 2013, several of the detectives, including myself, were assigned specific cold cases. So this box was almost falling apart when I initially was assigned this case. There was still bone fragment and skin tissue saved at the crime lab after all those years.
If you have DNA, you run it. And then you try to find out by sending it down through CODIS and missing persons to find out if you can get a match.
KODIS mengacu pada sistem gabungan indeks DNA yang telah diciptakan pada tahun 1998, di mana hasil DNA dimasukkan ke dalam basis data nasional, dan ini membantu pihak berwenang menemukan orang hilang, juga dapat menyelesaikan kasus kejahatan.
Detective Sheeman came to my office to tell me that they had a match and an identification.
I decided to check my email. The email I received identified my victim from Granger as Christine Ruth Thornton.
6 tahun setelah Rodney Alcala dihukum atas kejahatannya terhadap Robin Semso dan para korban wanita lainnya, ia kini berusia 73 tahun. Kesehatannya mulai menurun. Ia dikurung di tempat tidur di penjara Corcoran, California. Dan disitulah pejabat Wyoming datang untuk menginterogasinya atas pembunuhan terhadap Kristen Thornton.
So this is the copy of the photo that was found in Rodney Alcala's possession. We were able to match this photograph up. You can actually hold this picture up and actually show that this is almost the exact area that this photograph potentially was taken back in 1977. And here we are in 2020.
Rodney Alcala berada di kamar penjara medis dengan kondisi mengkhawatirkan, di mana di kamar yang ditempati ia terbaring di atas tempat tidur dengan cat dinding ruangan yang mengelupas dan lalat-lalat yang berdengung bertebaran di dalam kamarnya.
We also showed Rodney Alcala the picture of Christine seated on the back of his motorcycle, and it gives me chills even today to remember his reaction. Talk to me about the picture. What picture? The picture that you're pointing at. What's on your mind? Talk to me. God, talk to me. Tell me about that girl. He took his finger and he started tracing her body on the photograph. And then he started tapping on the photograph and kept doing that for a couple more minutes.
Do you know her? Yes or no? Yeah. You remember taking this picture? Yes. Okay. Now the question is, Mr. Alcala, how did she end up dead? Did you her? Yes or no, sir?
When it comes to the big question, he's not going to give it to you. But we got him to admit that he was there. And we got him to admit that he knew Christine. And that's all we needed.
Dan Rodney Alcala kembali didakwa atas pembunuhan tingkat pertama terhadap Kristen Thornton di Sweetwater County, Wyoming. Para korban Rodney Alcala masih ada di luar sana, polisi meyakini bahwa korban Radni Alcala sebanyak 130 wanita dan hingga saat ini polisi masih menunggu informasi dari masyarakat luas untuk dapat mengidentifikasi foto-foto milik Radni Alcala.
I believe there are dozens of that Rodney committed that have not been tied to him yet.
Some authorities believe that Radni Alcala had up to 130 girls and women. We may never know the scope of what he did.
I have prosecuted serious murders and child for over 20 years, some of the worst of the worst. But this is the one time I can say I really looked into the eyes of evil.
Radni Alcala is one of the most prolific serial killers probably in the history of the United States.
Korban terakhir Radni Alcala, Rabin Semso, diabadikan pada sebuah plakat di Pantai Huntington. Radni Alcala meninggal pada 24 Juli 2021, tetapi ia meninggal bukan karena eksekusi atas hukumannya, tetapi karena sebab alami pada usia 77 tahun. Untuk sobat semua, salam sehat, sukses dan bahagia selalu bersama keluarga sobat di rumah. Dan berikut sejumlah referensi dalam dokumenter kisah nyata KISAH kali ini. Dan silahkan sobat berbagi pendapatnya secara bijak dalam kolom komentar. Serta nantikan tayangan dokumenter kisah nyata KISAH selanjutnya.